and today on Stitch Lessons I'm going to show you how to embroider satin stitch. This stitch looks like a series of dense parallel lines that come together to fill a shape in your embroidery. I use this stitch most often to make the little triangle-shaped beaks on my owl plush toys, and I've developed a few tricks and variations that I'll show you as well. Here's how it's done. I started out by drawing a square with the disappearing fabric marker. Thread your needle and tie a knot at the end of your floss if you'd like, then choose where you'd want to start filling in the shape. I am aiming for the corner of this square. Push your needle up from the back along one edge and pull your thread through. Then go straight across the shape and push your needle down along the opposite edge. Pull it tight, then bring your needle back up again along the first edge, just a tiny bit down from your first stitch. Go back across, keeping your stitches parallel with one another, and push your needle down on that other edge just below your previous stitch. Continue filling in the shape using that pattern. If you end up with gaps between your stitches, feel free to go back up and add some more lines in those places because I feel like it looks better if your stitches are quite dense. I'm using all 6 strands of the embroidery floss here so you can clearly see what I'm doing, but the edges turn out smoother the less strands you use, though it also takes longer to fill in the whole shape if you're using thinner thread. Eventually, you'll have filled in the whole shape and it should look something like this. The parallel stitches can be a bit shiny, like satin, depending on the thread you're using. Now I find this stitch to be trickier when I'm doing shapes with round edges, so I'm going to try a circle. Here I'm drawing a quick guide. I started with a tiny stitch at the top and they get bigger as the stitches move toward the middle of the circle. One variation I like to use because it saves thread is to alternate the side that I start on. So since my last stitch ended on the left side, I'm going to start the next one on the left rather than going back to the right. Something to be careful of if you do it this way is that you can't get your stitches as close together on the first pass because you could actually undo your previous stitch if you accidentally push the needle up through the same spot. But especially if you're doing a larger shape, it can make a big difference since it isn't essentially doubling the shape on the side you won't even be seeing from the front. So here's how my little circle turned out, and here's the difference between the two methods when you flip it over onto the back. The biggest tip I can give you is that having a guide makes it a lot easier to end up with an exact shape. I have a tough time improvising satin stitch. So one thing that I like to do is to actually backstitch the guide before I start. Here I'm stitching a line for each side of a triangle, then I use satin stitch over the guides to fill in the shape. This works especially well for triangles because watch this, I don't even have to satin stitch over the third corner at the bottom. The guides come to a perfect point, so why mess with it? And that is how I embroider satin stitch. Thanks so much for watching this tutorial. I hope you make something lovely with what you learned. If you'd like to see more of the hand sewing and embroidery tutorials in this series, be sure to watch the rest of my Stitch Lessons playlist. Click one of the videos on the screen or check the video description for a link. Happy stitching!